Good afternoon on this glorious March 26th. We are nearing the end of the month, and this is the second episode of season three of the Love Your Vibe program. And I'm here today with,
Eleanor Hayward and
Akosua Brown.
thank you so much for joining us, Akosua. This is so exciting. Our topic today is about healing and community and the importance of that. And you've been in our community for 5 years now and
Yes.
recently facilitated your first group. So you got to experience it kind of from a participant layer and into moving into that mentoring. And I'd love your perspective on the shift of being, moving from being the participant and the sharing to holding the space because it's very much one and the same, but it does have an energetic difference to it.
Yes.
Would you mind sharing a little bit about that experience?
Oh, I'd love to. Because like the very first time that I was a participant, I had never before really paid for to be part of a group like this. What I do is I help people write books. And so often they're writing about self-help and things. And I was thinking that I was getting it by osmosis. So the
Yeah.
very first time, it was like you're getting the information, but you're also doing something with it. You've got homework. Then after that, I had quite a transformation, and then I was invited to be a space holder. And so what that meant is that other people were first-time participants, and I was someone who'd been through it once, but I was there to listen and to, you know, give support where necessary, and also to share and be part of the group. So that was an extraordinary situation because then you got to another layer of understanding the program. And I did that twice before I became a miracle mindset mentor myself. And I led one, and watching and leading people through this program is such a blessing and a gift because I got to be part in a more leadership way, in a more direct way of people moving through the program and experiencing what I experienced the very first time when I really it really made such a difference in how I thought about myself and helped me learn that I had the power to make some really big changes, which I did.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. There really is something about um, being in community that allows us to see parts that are in the shadow.
Mhm.
When we create that, would you agree, Eleanor, when we create that really safe, so we use this safer, seen, celebrated, and supported. The safety piece was such an important part for us to bring into this program and into the community, really where people could share the parts of them that they've hidden away, that they were afraid to look at. And when people are courageous in their vulnerability and can share the stories that have brought shame and fear and guilt forward into the light, it just the power is loosened from them. And the
Mhm.
beautiful transformation that I've witnessed is the courage that it invites in the others, whether it's other participants, but even the sacred space holders, people who've been through the program before. Like you said, Akoso, there's layers here
Mhm.
to be witnessed and revealed. So I would love, Eleanor, your feedback because you're our Jedi queen in it, and you
Mhm.
have so many, you've got so many levels of intelligence and understanding. As being a co-creator of this program that there's so many nuances. There's so many nuances, and I'd love for you to speak to the community piece. So that really is something that for myself, I didn't really recognize I needed until I had it. And then once I had it, I was like, how did I think I was going to do it any other way?
yes. And such a unique system that we're created. And for anybody who's trying to catch up, we created a 6-month group mentorship program based on Elvira Hopper's VIP Mindset Reset online course, which is an amazing personal evolution solution for heart-centered souls. that this is a toolbox of teachings and tools for personal reflection, inspiration, and ultimately healing, trauma healing. And so we created the 6-month program to piece together these teaching tools with some flow. So you can go through it as a paying participant for 6 months. And people who find value in the 6-month program are invited to come back as an apprentice to learn to facilitate the 6-month program. And for our apprentices who aren't ready to immediately jump into being a miracle mindset mentor, because it takes a level of personal integration and embodiment and an understanding of the skills and feeling confident in it is really our main requirement. That you can become a sacred space holder and hold space for other participants and even apprentices. And part of the training that we go through is, you mentioned the Jedi Queen, so thank you so much for that. And that's our acronym for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. I would love to say that we came up with that, but it's working that energy. So I, like the Star Wars nerd in me, loves the Jedi metaphor of working that energy within of us, but also recognize that we have a power in community and we have a responsibility to address our own biases and to address stereotypes and ultimately prejudice and discrimination that can unfold in the spiritual development community and in the world as a whole. So thank you, Jennifer. And the power of community, like I think I was surprised as we created the 6-month program and had our alpha and our beta, and we launched publicly, and it just never ceases to amaze me. Like the feeling just feels glowy. Like I've never had that sensation anywhere else.
Yeah.
That we do truly witness each other in that culture that Elvira conceptualized, that we are safer, seen, celebrated, and supported. And one of the teachings is that you have to feel that in your own skin first.
Yeah.
And until she put that in front of me, I was like, I don't feel that in my skin. And then that makes it a lot more challenging because then we don't have that standard for others. And it makes boundaries a lot muddier. And then it's easier, it's more complicated to discern what's other people's projections and what is me that's stuck.
Yeah.
One way to put that, but witnessing people and holding that and being able to hold and learn to embody this safer, seen, celebrated, and supported energy, then we can, it leads to an energy of non-judgment. I feel like that is really, and then the more that we reflect and the more that we heal, and that I learn to judge myself less, I learn to judge other people less
Yeah.
as well.
Huge.
So this is our theme today, and our episode is healing in community and why that's essential, because we can do personal development on our own. And that was why I joined this miracle magnet movement with Elvira, because I had learned some of the teachings and tools from the course one at a time on my own. And I'd had a degree of healing and insight. And I was like, oh, but she packaged them together with a bow. And I was like, oh, okay, that, because on their own together, and especially practicing together, because that's the thing, a lot of these teachings and tools can just become, as you said, shelf help, Jennifer. It's like we just kind of put them on the shelf and we don't actually practice with them. So how was community so transformative for you, Akosua? I heard you mention that.
Yeah, well, for one thing, the thing about listening without judging, that was a skill that you really learned through this. That you're learning to listen, and you're not waiting for your turn to speak, particularly as a space holder. When you're a participant, you're encouraged to speak. And certainly, I loved being a space holder, which I am in Jennifer's program right now. Again, because you're really practicing that listening, and that whenever you feel of anything that suggests a judgment, you kind of think, oh, that's the judge, and you're dismissing that, because you're there to hold space, to listen. And of course, we're part of the group as well. But that is one of your key roles there, that you've been through the program. You're not leading it. You're supporting Jennifer, and you're supporting the participants by by your steady presence even. So in
Steady
community,
presence.
so you're part of the safer and the seen. My gosh, that's what you're there to be, to really help to see the others. And when you're seen and you're supported through a program like that, you're going to feel safer, and in that way supported. So That is the beauty of having a role within a community, and and so you're helping yourself and others. It's a skill you learn, and also you know that you're helping Jennifer in that case of the one I'm in right now lead, as well as those participants to feel that safer, seen, supported, and celebrated, which
Yeah.
is what that's the beauty. Oh, and the beauty of community is that celebration as well.
Yeah. To
Yeah,
celebrate those wins
yeah.
because I don't think we weren't really taught to celebrate ourselves. Um,
No, we're
I
taught that that's
think,
bragging, right?
yeah,
Hmm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We have there's so many paradoxes, really. When we get through into the space of personal development. Um, we were speaking a bit earlier, before we came on camera about how healing doesn't happen in isolation, and I think depending on the person and the circumstance, we sometimes keep it all inside, right? People say, "Oh, how are you?" "Oh, fine." Even though we're not, we'll say, "Oh, we're
Yeah.
fine, thank you," because you're like, "Oh, nobody wants my stuff." And then the flip side of that is um, the oversharing, lack of boundaries,
Hmm.
and the oversharing. And I found myself on both sides
Hmm.
of that paradigm. Um, I've been a hairdresser for 35 years. Didn't I meet boundaries were not I didn't even understand the concept of boundaries. If a client walked in my room, it was just them and we were friends. So they got all of, if I was having a bad day, they heard about it. And I couldn't understand where all this crunchiness inside of me came from. And because it didn't talking about it, and this is the difference, talking about it, I kept perpetuating the pain onto myself
Hmm.
because there was no resolution in it. And I
Hmm.
think the thing when we're intentionally in community and we're doing this inner work of self-reflection and self-awareness, it's now you're saying these things, you're sharing this story, and there's a group of people that are just listening. They're not there to fix you, right? We're
Hmm.
not here to fix anybody, but we're there to witness. And in the witness, we can offer a have you looked at it this way in a kind
Hmm.
way, right? Especially the
Hmm.
facilitator. You're meant to kind of to coach and direct. We see that this part is hurt, but here's the other side of that. And then it's almost like you're looking in a mirror.
Hmm.
Like I think working in community really is, as you mentioned, Akosua, when someone's speaking and you're like, "Ooh, what's that? There's an activation here. Oh, that's
Mhm.
mine," right? We're not going to play the blame game and say, "You made me feel this way." It's like, "Ooh, this has triggered something that needs to be looked at." And I think
Hmm.
that's the beautiful thing when you're on your own and we get stuck in that isolation. Um, we can't see our shadows. And really, at the root of everything, we are relational beings. We are meant to be in community. We are designed to be in community. And I think a lot of times for people, as we've learned so much about trauma in this group, that it's hard for people to build that trust to share those depths because a
Mhm.
lot of our trauma has happened relationally,
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yes.
right? With a parent, a friend, boyfriend, girlfriend. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
now it's kind of like, oh, I've got to keep all of this to myself. So it's this fine unmasking of
Hmm.
what's underneath all of that. So the beauty about community is really bringing in the connection. And as we learn to love ourselves and understand boundaries and energetics, we can then begin to create bonds and form bonds with people that okay, this is what trust feels like. This is what trust within
Hmm.
myself feels like. And now I have the ability to
Mhm.
say, is this something that is ready to be birthed or shared, or is it not? And that I think is a huge part of the conversation around community that I'm not sure if it's addressed. I'm not sure. I just know for myself, we very much get stuck in our stories.
Hmm.
And when we speak our stories out loud, people can kind of say, oh, well, my perspective was this. Well, now you've got what we were saying last week, Eleanor. There's three sides to the story.
Mhm.
There's my side, your side, and then the truth is somewhere in between.
Mhm.
But when we're thinking as the primary character of our story, as we would, we're not considering the other side of the story, the perspective of
Mhm.
that secondary character, because they're also a primary character in their story.
Yeah.
So how do you bring those sides together? And it's really learning how to communicate clearly, work through conflict. I think these are transformational, and these, I believe, as we've been doing this Jedi work as well, Eleanor, actually we can transfer this out beyond the community as its unit, as its whole, into our lives and affect other people in such a positive way.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Yay.
really juicy. Does anybody
Very
have
much
anything to
so.
add to that?
Well, I suppose what I like about being in community and having like this safer space where you know you're going to meet and talk about some issues is that you're listening to others, and that it like it's kind of the brainstorming. It's like those little mind, like I'm thinking of a mind map where the example of someone else and what they went through and the stuff they're working through and or their stories of healing makes you reflect afterwards, even because you're in there and you're in some ways excited, say, by this opportunity to share, because we don't often have that, like where you've gone and you're working together on in the 6 months programs, you're working on something. Each meeting has a theme, and I recall in the last one in particular where my humble brag, I just got back from a month in Mexico. And my story is that the likes of me doesn't do that. I don't have the whatever, the adventurousness or the money or the whatever story it is to go and spend a month in another country. But there I did it. And yet, at times when I was there, because the last meeting we were in, I was actually in Mexico,
Mhm.
and I was reflecting at how that story came up. I wasn't even thinking of that story during the meeting, but afterwards, I was thinking of the meeting, and something that someone mentioned applied to this little doubt thing in my mind that was saying, um, "This isn't you. This isn't the this that little voice was adding fear to what was an enjoyable experience, being
Yeah.
away and explain." And the voice was saying, um, you know, because, we've all had trauma in our lives. And my story was that the trauma came to me because it was me. It was like, you are unlucky. The stuff that's bad that
Mhm.
happens is because of you. The good stuff is a fluke. And someone had mentioned the four agreements and about our experiences not being personal. And it stuck this time.
Yeah.
Because when I was thinking, and like trying to think, oh my gosh, how is it that you are away for a month in another country? That's not what you do. And you are the type of person that those kind of things happen to. And this voice said from the meeting, it wasn't personal. And like I mentioned before, I've been through this program a number of times, and each time you get a new level of healing. And that thing that reminded me that it wasn't personal came from being part of a community and then reflecting on it afterwards. And the healing came afterwards,
Yeah.
where I I believed it, and I was mentioning to Eleanor and Jennifer just before how I used to be the person where bad things happen to because I'm not kind of, like I mean, and I don't mean to, because in some ways I don't mean to exaggerate it, because I do feel less stuck in trauma from doing this, but also still there was that underlying belief that I didn't even know was still there.
Yeah. The
That
shadows. Hmm.
Yes, that crop magnet thing, and that went, and from there I saw other miracles happen. Like where you note it and you see, oh my gosh, it was like the next day I went to this. We went out for lunch, and I'm just getting shivers now. And this woman came up to me, a stranger, and she said, "May I hug you?" Like I'm in another, and she said to me that I reminded her of her daughter-in-law and her grandchild, and she missed them.
Oh,
And so, and so,
That's how the joy was coming
The
out of you.
joy,
I
yeah, the
love
joy.
that.
And then, I manifested this gorgeous upgrade in the hotel, and it doesn't feel, it's like that other stuff wasn't personal. It happened, but it wasn't personal. You deal with it, whatever. But I am not an unlucky person. Like, even, and I would never have thought of that even as a surface thing. But anyway, that is one of the greatest things that happened to me in community just last week. It was actually last week that happened. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yay,
celebrating you.
Akosua.
Thank
Kosua.
you.
Woo!
Yes,
I
yeah, and I get to tell
love.
you guys, my sisters, this
Yes.
because you get it,
Yes.
and that's the beauty of having a community where you are safe, you're seen, celebrated, and supported.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Love it.
Yeah, I love the four agreements. Like that was just a pivotal book for me as well. And not
Hmm.
taking anything personally was like, oh, and it's usually bad things. It's like
Hmm.
if I made a date and then somebody cancels, it's like we tend to want to feel bad. It's just like, oh, we
Hmm.
take it personally that there's something about us that they don't like. So that was helpful to reflect on taking it personally. But it was even not taking positive things personally, because that can inflate the ego
Yeah.
Hmm.
as well. So there's this happy medium
Yeah.
of gracious humility, and I could see that in your eyes when you were discussing the upgrade, sharing with
Hmm.
us the upgrade Akasua. It was just like, oh my
Sparkle
gosh,
was there.
and feeling blessed, right?
Hmm.
Blessed and highly favored, as you
Yes.
said backstage on your new shirt. So that is so
Yes.
cool. And that's it. And so many of these concepts, they can be cognitively understood,
Mhm.
but it takes time to practice and embody them. And in community, and it's funny, like there's isolation, which feels like it's imposed upon us, but then there can be solitude. And I believe, like you said, there can be healing in solitude
Absolutely.
after the fact. You can kind of learn
Hmm.
these aha moments and see a different possibility in community, but it takes some time to integrate
Hmm.
that there is power in healing on your own. And yet, like I can share like a recent story for myself, even that I was listening to a podcast and it triggered a memory from my own childhood, and tears sprung to my eyes. I think I was driving to your house, Jennifer. There's like, oh yeah, I just had this memory of this traumatic childhood event. Um, but then, life goes on and the tears go away. But it did kind of put a bookmark for me to say, I need to come
Yeah.
back to this. So
Yeah.
when my apprentice was facilitating the session, it was holding space for these childhood life events. And I just full on opened up into tears in my session, and was able to like just breathe through it and practice some somatic movements just to process and integrate that trauma. Because the thing is like we can say, oh well, I'm fine, like I grew up and it's all good now, but your body still remembers the fear and the shame
Hmm. Yeah.
of abuse, for
Yeah.
example, or neglect. And until we face that and complete the
Cycle.
cycle, the loop, you taught me that, Jennifer, and like in somatic healing, that if your nervous system has to complete the loop where you get stuck in a frame of fear, and then we just feel like that's the normal that
Like the skip in
develops.
the record is what trauma's like. It's the skip in the record, and it will
Mhm.
continue to skip until you can smooth it out.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us
I
more
love
about that, because we
metaphors.
do
Yeah.
we did our best to take the miracle mindset teachings and tools and bring them into the 6-month program, and we integrated a degree of emotional intelligence to be like, well, how does this sit in your body? How do you feel that? And somatic wellness is part of that. And we had an introduction to that in our 6-month program, Jennifer. But is there anything you'd like to add in this integration, embodiment, and community? Is there anything that you're practicing with your participants that you'd like to share?
This is a deepening practice. I mean, I
Mhm.
lived in my head for decades
Yeah.
where I had a belief, my operating system or my BS,
Yes.
my belief system, it wasn't safe in my body. So to
Yes.
be in my body, there was immediate fear. And then for me, fear was just the standard. The fear was standard. So unless I isolated so that nobody was around me to create fear, it I would if I went out into the world and wasn't feeling safe, my other coping was drinking because that just numbed the fear. And then I
Hmm.
could, like, it's almost like I could be myself because the fear wasn't there overriding my experience. So, this is how the body learns to navigate life with what it knows. Trauma is the skip in the record that happened back when you were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but it repeats itself in this cycle. So we always talk about, crap mindset and a miracle mindset. The crap magnet is the trauma, but it's not the victimization. I had something pretty traumatic happen when I was 15 years old, but it was how I wasn't able to heal that cycle. I wasn't able to come back to wholeness within myself, that piece of me broke off. And then it was like, well, now this is what we have to do to keep her safe and alive.
Mhm.
It's in the mirroring of community, coming back to finding what safety is within, confronting that fear and holding it like a wee-born babe.
Mhm.
You can integrate the shame, we can integrate the fear, and that's the expansion. And we call it like titration. You step in a little bit, and when it gets too much, you step back out. So rather than enmeshing yourself in the feeling, it's like this part of me is feeling this. So I've learned this kind of way of it's mine, but I'm not it. I'm not the emotion. I have a part of me that is experiencing this. And how do I hold space? And I've learned to, oh, this is here. And if it's too big, I take a step away from it. And I visually, our minds are super, super powerful. I can put it just a arm's length away. And now I can see it. It's not taking my breath away. And I've been able to
Mhm.
move myself because I'm safe, right? I can look around and I'm in my room and I'm
Hmm.
safe,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
This fear is not real. And I can put it out and say, now what are you trying to protect me from? What is there? There's a cycle that's happened that is now being invited to be interrupted. So the triggers or the activations are that there's this invitation to finally close the loop, to buff out that skip on the record and to come back to wholeness. Where now this part has been witnessed, it's integrated, and now it's not acting out, trying to defend and protect you. It's just like, oh, hey, I can hang back now
Mhm.
because I know mama's got it or daddy's got it,
Yeah.
like the adult version of us gets to show up in life.
Mhm.
And that's really what this inner work is about. You know,
Yeah.
we talk about drama. I mean, drama is trauma. And so many of us get into that yelling back and forth and nobody's hearing anybody. At the root of it, it's trauma and a needs not being met. And there's fear there. So I'm going to come power over you to try to get my need met, try to be heard. Like there's always a need. So we kind of get through the weeds. It's very weedy. It's kind of like walking through quicksand. But and the beautiful thing about doing this in community is that we reflect this onto each other.
Hmm.
And it's layers. This is not a one and done process.
Yes.
I've
Right.
been on this journey for 6 years, Akosua for 4 or 5 years, Eleanor for
Mhm.
20 years.
Yeah.
So this is not a one and done. Um, and I would like to invite with 3 minutes left in our clock, and it doesn't have to be precise, but we want to try to keep it at 30 minutes for Eleanor Akosua to speak to your experience around creating that safety for yourself in community.
Mhm. I
Mm.
I'll quickly say that
Please.
it's learning where you feel safe so that you know who to express some of your vulnerabilities to. And in that way, you get heard and seen and supported. And that I know that this is my community where I can do that. And I sometimes I'll hold on to something that's maybe triggered me outside. I'll think, oh, I'm so lucky I have that community to like explore it more,
Yeah.
and I don't bother with it out there. I just cut it off and bring it where I can. I know that I'll have the a safer place to discuss it.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of the bookmark
Yes, the
because our
bookmark.
brains
Yes,
can bring us right back there.
yes, Yeah.
to the felt sense and the emotion of the moment when you're in a safe environment to allow it to
Yeah.
surface. I love that.
I
That's
learned a new
such an
one today.
important
I
part of
love
it.
that. The
Yeah.
bookmark I will
Yeah, the
have.
bookmark. Our writer, yeah, for sure. Eleanor.
Yes, because it's not like
Awesome.
I'd forgotten that that life event had happened and there
Mhm.
had been amends. And it's like in my head, like you said, Jennifer, like I'm a recovering overthinker. I spent years in my head, and that was my nervous system's defense mechanism to outwit the threat and to look at all of the angles to keep me safe and protected. And yet I was surprised. This healing process still surprises me that just because I had written it down that I remember that this event happened doesn't mean that I'd processed it. And I feel like that is where our medical system still has room to expand into the trauma awareness to really witness with a bedside manner is another way of
Yeah.
saying the safer seen, celebrated, and supported. It's to really feel seen and heard, because so often there's a time crunch, right? Not to say that we
Mhm.
obviously don't have a time response in a group, but to just honor each other, to witness the divine in each other's eyes, to really see the soul in people and recognize that everything's temporary and to paint a picture of, well, like to hold space to say, well, have you considered looking at it this way? Because I remember Akosua at one point you had been telling us a story about your husband, and I had suggested an insight about your relationship there. Do you,
Yeah.
and I feel complete here, but would you like to share with us before we go back to Jennifer to wrap up?
Well, there's several times, to be honest, but I was discussing this just last week as well because we were doing the same the Angels of Evolution
Hmm.
step in the program on Friday, and my ex was definitely an angel of evolution, meaning that he created drama in me, and that I had to like examine it so that I could evolve because that was not the way I wanted to show up in my life. And I remember that first time I was going, he's such an that's exactly the words I was using. I kept saying that, and then you redirected me, and I thought at first that I felt I wasn't sure because I was like right in the drama, but certainly I learned about how what a trigger means and how I could in safety discuss it and
Yeah.
then move past it, examine it, take radical responsibility. Those three fingers pointing back at me when I'm going like this. And that's where the evolution happens in community, directed by people who know what they're doing as well. And I'm pleased to be one of those people who know what they're doing, having experienced this and gone through the program and been through the program. That's the excitement of watching people who I'm mentoring experience the same kind of thing that you led me through. So once again, thank you, Eleanor.
Beautiful.
Welcome.
Thank
My
you.
honor
Thank you.
and pleasure. Thank you,
Yeah.
Akaswa. Thank you, Jennifer.
Well, this has been beautiful. If you have any questions, we're going to be putting this in the Miracle Magnet Zone. You're welcome to join us there on Facebook. If you have any questions, please do enter them below. Um, but to summarize, really, our shadows are when they're brought into the light, when they're brought into a safe space where they can be integrated, where they can even be examined and witnessed. Um, the celebrated is celebrating the small steps.
Mhm.
Really, because we've, been taught that that's bragging. And, when you have community around you celebrating, hey, I was able to flip the story on this, right? And now
Mhm.
that's not running the show. That belief is not running the
Yes.
show. That's a celebration,
Mhm.
because that impact ripples through your life, through your children's lives, right? Through
Mhm.
your business workings. This kind of work really, we firmly believe that everybody should be doing it, but being an entrepreneur, being able to, again, I've got to do this on my own. We get to do it in community here within the Lovely Vibe Transformation, which is pretty fabulous.
Mhm.
Um, so if you have any questions, thank you so much for joining us today, Akosua.
Thank you.
Eleanor, it's always awesome to do this with you. I'm really excited to be part of season 3. And thank you to Elvira for bringing us together and giving us this platform to share our passion and our message and magic. And I bid you all a beautiful evening. Blessings upon all of you, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.